Hello everyone, welcome back to D1 Crashout. I don't really know how to categorize this, but you don't owe anyone anything. Oh, and what do I mean by that? So, when you're born, and you're born from the womb, and you didn't ask to be born, you are not obligated to show your parents anything or give them anything back, right? They chose to have you, and they need to represent the consequences of their actions, which means raising you. You, as a kid, should probably listen to them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your parents are gods and everything that they do is right. Like, they're just raising you the best that they can, and it's important to recognize that. The other part of this is there's this obligation that you should grow up and that they probably know better than you, like experience wise, if you're a kid. But not all parents deserve their kids, and all kids deserve their parents either. Right? It's all a part of growing up. But when you are born, you aren't obligated to listen to your parents. You don't have to do it. There's just nothing better for you to do. Like, you don't know any better, right? And then once you start knowing better, you start to get a mind of your own, and you probably defy your parents, and that's done in your teen years. And you might feel sorry for your actions, but you might not know any better. And then their job is to raise you. That is their obligation, as they chose to have you in your world. So you are obligated to the consequences of your own actions, in which you being born isn't necessarily your fault nor your accountability. If you choose to sign up for a job and then you get tasks in that job, you are choosing to continue to do that job. Hopefully, you're at a place where you have at will employment, but you're choosing to do that job. And whether or not you want to continue to do that job because you need the money or whatever, like, that is a choice that you made, that maybe you didn't have to make, or maybe you did have to make it. But you might feel like there is this always presence, and this definitely comes from a position of privilege. So, just for the sake of thought, that you have to do this thing, that there's just something that you have to do, in which this is not your end all be all, whatever you are doing out of necessity in the moment. So, another way to put this, that doesn't have to be your one and only job, right? This, whatever you are working at, you chose to work there, and whether or not nobody else accepted you or not, that is because they aren't obligated to accept you, right? They put out the hiring post, they need to hire someone, competition runs its course, somebody gets the job, most likely, and that doesn't have to be you. If you do get the job and you plan to go through with it, you might feel this pressure that all these other people competed for this job, my manager expects me to do a lot, all those good things, and you can still quit. You have free will. You don't have to do the job because other people set that expectation on you, or because you need the money. There's other jobs that you can apply for, and you might be there stuck in limbo, and it makes sense to not quit the job, which by all means is most likely true, but you don't have to stay there, right? It's optional. It's something that you chose. You were living before, whether it was barely getting by or you live a really lavish life and you just wanted to have more money on top of it, but there's nothing that you have to do. There's things that you want to do. There's things that make sense. There's things that are going to better set you up for your future. But there is no have to do. Even people who mess it all up and end up on the streets somehow still find a way to survive. And it's not the living that anybody wants to do, right? That's the living that they are subject to. But life is not obligated to bring them back, and that person clearly didn't feel like they needed to have that life, or they just got screwed over, or whatever it was. But you have free will. You're able to choose and have control over your life, and that is the big subject. Of course, I think it's important to get a job or have a reliable source of income and, stand on your own 2 feet and have independent thoughts. So not only do the things that your parents have to make sense to you, but your parents should hopefully be listening to you and caring for you. And the way that they express that may vary between individuals. And I'm not here to say that you should defy everyone and that you should always say no and that things are always terrible, but it is to take a step back and that sense of extremism and demonstrate the fact that the things that you choose to do are choices, right? You don't have to be friends with someone. It's like, oh, I need to be a really good teammate and have all these great vibes. Like, no, that's a choice. Like, you guys are still, even if you're a dysfunctional team, most likely be a team, even if there's conflict and turmoil within the team constantly. right? You don't have to hang out with your friends, right? You have your own priorities and your own life to live. And if they choose to not be friends with you because you chose to have a life of your own, it sucks. Because maybe you really like those friends, or maybe those are the only friends that you had. But they also, clearly, didn't feel like they were obligated to be friends with you. And if your relationship was so transactional, so contractual, maybe that's saying something. So, it's tough to think about. Thinking about this general idea that you have more control over your life than you think. A lot of people like to make this ultimatum that there's this have to do. And it's not true. People find so many ways to live. There are so many ways to progress forward in life. It's very unfair to say that there is only one way to go forward in life, because there's a lot of right answers. Sorry, a lot of ways to get to the right answer, so to speak, right? There's so many different ways to get income. There are a lot of ways to go through education. We put a lot of stress on the public schooling system in America, but as you'll find out in college, that shit hits the fan so fast, where teachers are not standardized. Your curriculum might not even be standardized as your classes get more and more niche. Right? There's such a great disparity between the people that actually take the classes too, but they can still develop skills outside of the classes and get a good job, right? The degree is not the end all be all. One of the first things they told us when we got there is that your degree is not going to guarantee that you get a job, right? That's going back into the statistics lecture. It's just, you can, and probability that it could be very likely that you get a job when you come out of college, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get a job. It's not guaranteed. And you could look at the statistics and be, wow, all these people get X amount of money when they go graduate from this college. It doesn't mean that you're going to get the job. Right? Nobody owes you the job just because you went to that college. All right? There's so many power dynamics at play. And there's idea that things are guaranteed, or that this is bound to happen, or that you have to do this and that this is going to support you. It's just not real. It's all fluff. So, this is a really bad whiff. Anyways, these are things that you might want to think about in your day-to-day life. A lot of people are like, oh wow, I hate my work. I have to do this. It's like, did you want the money? Did you really need the money? Or do you have additional backing? Is this your only lifeline? If it does, that sucks. And you feel like you have to do it, but you don't. And you can just be homeless and no one's going to obligate you to live that life where you have a house and and food and a stable life and career, right? Like, that's still within your free will that you can choose. And it may not feel like you can choose because most people wouldn't make that decision, but you can. And that is the main point that I'm getting at, that no matter how stupid it seems or how egregious or extreme, all those terrible things, you are still within control of your life. Like, there was reels, if people have ever seen them, of like, you have free will. You do. And whether or not you want to exercise it, or it's within your best interest to work between a way which makes most sense to you, which might be functional, that might help you live your life, that is completely up to you, right? That is a choice that you make. And I think it's a good choice to make, to try to be stable and live your life stably. But you don't have to make it. And some people throw it all away to take a risk, and sometimes that risk pays off and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you put it all on black and then it goes on red, and now you're just out $10,000, right? You reap the consequences of your own actions, but you had free will in that moment. That was a choice that you were able to make. And whether or not it was a good one, I am not here to tell you. Whether or not you should or should not listen to your parents, I'm not here to tell you. But what I am saying is that it is never a have or a must. There's always that free will. People rebel. People rebel against governments. If you don't get enough people, it might not be very successful, but you can choose to just say, hey, I don't want to do this. And you might die for it in certain countries, right? There's a lot of things that are out of your control too, and it may not feel like you have free will there. And that is true. Bigger stick diplomacy. So I'm talking about personal choices, obviously, right? If you're in prison, you can't just choose to escape. You can try, and it may or may not be successful, but that is a very bad example of having free will, so to speak. So, yeah, that's it. That's the main point of the video. There's still 3 minutes left of this Swift play, so probably just going to let it ride out while I think about more things to say. I always try to fill up these videos and actually reach the end of them while I'm talking, but sometimes I actually just, and by sometimes I mean every single time, don't actually think about what I want to say as much as I just have one prompt, as in usually the title, and then I have some general idea or line of thought that I wanted to go down. Right? I don't owe you guys good content, and you don't have to watch to the end. Like, that's a complete choice that you make in and of yourself. I could just ghost all my friends, you know. I don't have to text someone back. That's free will. People do ghost, but it's like for my family, right? I like them. I like spending time with them. I want to maintain that relationship. I want to text them. They support me and my life, and I want to continue that trend, right? That's gratitude. That's working together as teams. You know, you don't have to treat your coworkers nicely, whether or not HR has a say in whether your approach to that is fruitful or not also exists. So that is something to say that even though you do have free will, there are also rules to the life that you live and lead. So things are not as simple or as free as it seems. Where it's like, oh, you can just do this. Right? You can just live your life and you live without consequences. No, you have free will, but you also are uniquely accountable for the consequences of your actions and also the consequences of your environment. Unfortunately, some people are born into difficult situations and you just have to deal with that. Other people have people representative of them, like their kids, and their kid gets into a fight, and now you as a parent are bearing the consequences of your kid, even though you cannot control every single variable about your kid, and your kid just probably just did some stupid shit in the moment. So, something to think about. All right, that even though you can exercise free will, it doesn't feel like you can, mostly because you probably shouldn't. Maybe that is your intuition, and as we grow up, we get more and more cornered into this mindset of things that we feel like we can and cannot do, right? Societal norms, that's what judgment is for. And that weighs on people. And that makes your life difficult. But if I was to have a large sentimental message, it is to never forget that you do have that free will, that you uniquely have the ability to try whatever you want to try. And you will uniquely reap the consequences of those actions. Do not come back at me and say that this life advice caused you to commit a crime, right? Hopefully you knew that it was a crime and you chose to take the risk associated with that. We do all live in a real and functioning world, which means there are pros and cons or caveats to the things that we do and risks associated with the things that we do. So don't go crazy, but you're in control. Never forget that. I'm in control of that whiff I just did. Alright, that's my ramble for the day. Starting the backlog. Have a great day, everyone. I will see you all tomorrow.